My biggest problem with gesture is that there is no right or wrong way to do it, and every time I used to feel completely overwhelmed by it. But after thousands of gestures, I came across this workflow by Hampton, and it is literally what I wish I found as a beginner, because it gave me a gesture formula that is simple and repeatable. So today I will break it down step by step. When I first saw Michael's method, I said, wait, but this doesn't look anything like the reference. Which is true, but this is not the goal. People don't care about your reference. They will never see it. All they care about is the final result, your story. So this workflow is all about analyzing and abstracting the essence of the human body, just to have a setup for the later stages. Remember, we are not trying to copy the contour of the figure, with all those details and bumps. And if you are still stuck with that mindset, I think this method can be the best cure. It divides the body in 8 different parts and uses the same types of line every single time, which are asymmetrical to give movement and balance, while symmetry gives a very static result, wrapping lines to show form and perspective. So let's start from the most important part of the body, the part that will set up the entire figure. You see, one of my biggest problems with gesture is that I always felt lost about where to start, every single time. I mean, you can literally start anywhere. Torso, feet? This workflow solves that by starting from the area you will instinctively look at first. Every single time you will have a figure or even a person in front of you, the head. Also, we will refer back to it to make sure our proportions are somewhat correct. They don't need to be perfect at this stage. For this, we will be using a simple sphere, the only shape we will be using in this workflow. All the rest is just simple lines. But keeping the head like this is pretty generic, I would say. And it doesn't give us a sense of direction, a story. So to solve this, we will add a simple wrapping line and a center line to indicate where it's pointing to. So this is our setup. The result of this is that not only makes it easier to continue down the figure, but it also gives us an idea of the overall proportion of it. But in my opinion, the real power of this workflow lies in this next part, the 4 sections of the spine. So let's walk through them. And by the way, if you are struggling with the gesture drawing, this is completely normal. And if you want help, feel free to join my free Discord community of artists specifically focused on improving on this aspect of figure drawing. The link is in the description below. When I had to draw a figure, I always had the tendency to make it extra stiff and rigid. And this is because I wasn't aware of the nature of the body given to it by the spine. Because you have to know that the body is a series of masses counterbalancing each other with opposing angles. And the 4 sections of the spine are the key for this structure. The first section is the cervical area, in other words, the neck. We need to move it down and away from the head with a simple C-shaped line. Then the thoracic section that catches the rhythm of the neck and goes in the opposite direction. See the counterbalancing? To balance this, instead, we need another line that represents the stretch of the torso, a long C-shaped line that goes all the way down. The third section is the lumbar section of the spine, opposing the thoracic and connecting it to the last section of the lumbar region that goes again in the other direction. So that's the second big part that goes into our figure. The spine with its 4 sections given by these 4 plus 1 lines. Okay, now we have the spine in place. We can incorporate the next step right at the bottom of it. Because the section of the spine are all well and good, but we need to close off the lower portion of the torso by adding just a couple of wrapping lines to indicate the pelvis. In a standing pose like this, these wrapping lines will usually point downwards, showing the upper plane of the pelvis. Remember, this happens because the pelvis naturally counters the orientation of the ribcage in the upper torso. And talking about the ribcage, this is a great time to also add the wrapping lines for the torso, which will point in the opposite direction compared to the pelvis. So this is the third part to add right after the spine. And like this, we completed the torso. At this point, we already completed the main area of the body, and without stressing too much or losing the rhythm. But now what? Well, at this point, think about how you want your figure to be. Do you want it to be unbalanced or perfectly balanced? This is exactly where the story you want to tell will surface. Stable poses are not wrong, they will be less exciting maybe, but they will communicate strength, power. On the other hand, unstable poses will get a sense of movement, of suspense, of action. These are way more interesting in my opinion. And remember, you are not a slave of your reference. But in either one of these cases, we need to think about the placement of our legs. First, we need to know where the weight is. Is it on just one leg or on both legs equally? If it is mainly on just one leg, we need to start there. Always start from the weight-bearing leg because it will complete the balance of the figure. Because depending on where it is, it will tell you if the figure is balanced or not, and it will change the story greatly. To do it, just keep in mind the rhythm principle, to keep the flow alive down the body. We can use even a simple C-shaped line for the upper leg and one for the lower leg. To finish off, just use a couple of wrapping lines to give them the right orientation. And then move on to the supporting leg, that just helps to stabilize the body, using the exact same formula. Rhythm plus wrapping. Very important, don't forget the feet. I just use a simple triangle. No need to overcomplicate it. If you want to go deeper, I suggest Michael's book. And now we have a full picture of how our figure will support its weight. The majority of the figure is in place. There is just one last thing we need to complete the body. I'm sure you know what it is. And this workflow will allow us to do it very easily. I used to spend a lot of annoying time working on the arms, and too early in my workflow, without going anywhere actually, and even ending up with disproportionate limbs. But this method solves that by leaving them for last and just keeping them very simple with just two rhythm lines, one for the upper and one for the lower arm. Like for the legs, we will add a couple of wrapping lines to show perspective and direction. For the end, just continue the rhythm lines of the lower arm. So finally, the last piece of the puzzle is there, and we completed our gesture. The great thing about this workflow is that it gives you a framework, a blueprint that you can repeat for any pose you want with the same lines in the same order. But if you want to know other tips to find your way to do gesture, this video is for you, and I will see you on my next step.